by the time I had my bachelor's degree, I knew that I wanted to engineer not physical things like electrons or airfoils or motors, but the human psyche. Because that's the area that people don't really understand. I had a long career as a human development engineer, where I worked with hundreds of clients for many thousands of hours. Now, as I was doing that, I started to observe that my clients would improve in ways that were predictable to me.
A person who never made mistakes, never tried anything new. Welcome to Podcast with SHEILA, a podcast that is spreading positivity around the world by sharing inspiring life experiences. Today's guest, Jim Marshall, is a human behavior expert who has discovered an unknown human phenomena which is well received in our world today and will be sharing that with us. Hello, Jim, and welcome to Podcast with SHEILA.
Thank you, Sheila. Nice to be here.
Nice to meet you too. So in brief, who is Jim? Where does he come from? Stuff like that before we set the ball rolling.
Well, first let me tell you that I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena, which greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which I constructed a revolutionary practical philosophy called Septemics, and which was published in a book called Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. As for my qualifications, I'm a polymathic intellectual whose areas of expertise include psychology, philosophy, theology, parapsychology, science, engineering, mathematics, law, literature, history, metaphysics, military science, political science, physical culture, education and organization, and music. And I hold a Bachelor of Science cum laude from City University of New York.
Oh, this is brilliant. You have such a rich background. Was that what led you to the study of human behavior?
Well, by the time, I was an engineering student. By the time I had my bachelor's degree, I knew that I wanted to engineer not physical things like electrons or airfoils or motors, but the human psyche, because that's the area that people don't really understand. So the short version is I had a long career as a human development engineer, where I worked with hundreds of clients for many thousands of hours. Now, as I was doing that, I started to observe that my clients would improve in ways that were predictable to me. Meaning, I wouldn't know the result the person was going to get before he got it, even though I didn't tell him anything. So I never told this to anybody, but I made notes. And as the years went by, I started to observe that my clients were actually going up scales. So needless to say, this made me even better at what I did, because I would know how the session was going to turn out, because I knew these scales. Now, by about 1995, I had about 32 scales of varying lengths, between 3 and 7. And there was one scale in particular that I had that I absolutely knew was correct, and it had 6 levels. Now, in 95, I discovered it had a 7th level. And when I inserted that 7th level into the 6th level scale, it manifested mathematically. Having taken 26 semesters of math, I knew what I was looking at here. And I knew that this must be natural law, because anything that has mathematics embedded in it is natural law. So when I realized what that was, that first scale, I realized this was big, that I had discovered something, and all kinds of implications jumped out at me, because that's what mathematics is about. The whole point of mathematics at an advanced level is that you use it to develop your understanding of an area. You know, you take an equation or formula and you work with it. That's how Einstein found his famous formula E = mc squared. It was derived mathematically. He just worked with the formula, you substitute parts in and so forth, And eventually he got down to E equals MC squared. Now, because I discovered this, I thought, well, I wonder how many of these other scales are actually 7-level scales that hadn't been developed all the way, because I wasn't developing anything. I was just helping my clients and taking note of what manifested in the sessions. So knowing what I was looking for, it was easy for me to find the remaining levels on these other scales. And in a short period of time, I had about 32 7-level scales. And as they went to 7 levels, they all manifested mathematically. So I realized that I had discovered a new subject that was based on natural law. And all of this was discovered empirically. In other words, there's no theory here. It just presented itself to me in my work. So I realized this could really help people, because other people could have the same benefit that I had of knowing what was going to occur with a person before it occurred. Now, after I had all these skills, not only could I see this in my clients as ascending the scales, but I could see that in life, people also descending the scales.
Okay.
So,
Jim, before you go on, let's break it a little bit further, because I'm a bit confused here as well. So, from what I gather, you study the behavior of people and you are able to tell what is going to happen to them even before it happens. Is that it? Great. And you had you were able to figure this out through a mathematical system, or great. Is that what is termed septematic? If I got the word right.
Well, let me tell you what septemics is. Septemics. S-E-P-T-E-M-I-C-S.
Great.
Okay, septemics is a philosophical science.
Okay.
Based on the fact that many phenomena related to human beings occur in a sequence of 7 levels.
Okay.
Literally, the word septemics means of or pertaining to 7.
Okay.
Septemics comprises a collection of scales or hierarchies, each of which breaks down various human phenomena into a hierarchy of 7 steps.
Okay.
There are 35 such scales which span the spectrum of human experience, meaning any situation that arises in the life of a human will be successfully analyzed by one or more of these scales, usually more than one. There are 24 scales which apply primarily to individuals and 11 which apply primarily to groups.
Okay.
Each of these scales provides a user with an infallible way of determining the salutariness or beneficialness of any group, individual, or activity. If the group, individual, activity moves person or group up these scales, it's beneficial or positive. If it moves them down, it's detrimental or negative. More importantly, if you find out what level you or another person or some group is at, that by itself is tremendously enlightening and beneficial. And finally, once you know the actual level of a person or group, you can improve that person or group by moving them up one level at a time. All of these advantages represent major steps forward for society. Each of these scales is an axis against which to evaluate human behavior, and combined, they empower one to understand, predict, and manage human affairs to a degree hitherto unattainable by most.
So from what I gather, our human behavior and everything we do is backed by science, is it?
Well, science is the activity of deriving or determining what natural phenomena are. That's what scientists do. Engineers like myself, we take those phenomena and we use them to create specific results. So first I had to discover the phenomenon, which was a scientific activity, and then I had to take that phenomena and use it to construct a workable philosophic system. And then I had to express it in a way that would make sense to the average reader. I spent 25 years working on this book.
Okay.
A lot of that was expressing it in a way that would make sense to people.
Yeah.
Because understanding the phenomena and conveying the phenomena are two very different things.
Yeah.
So there are 35 scales, each of which has 7 levels, and that means 245 different levels, each of which had to be verified and cross-referenced and expressed in a way that would connect with people. Now, I've had almost 27 years now of experience with this, because the first version of this book was written in late 95, and I started giving it around to people, and everybody who looked at it had very positive responses.
Great.
So I kept developing it, and I kept showing it to people, and I kept getting positive responses. So I already know that this works.
Great.
So I worked on it for 25 years, and before I said, okay, I could probably work on this longer, but I'm not going to live forever, so I'm going to release this now. So the book has been out about 1.5 years now. And it really helps people.
Yeah.
That's why I wrote it, to help people. You see, I had a career of helping people by the hundreds. Mm. And this book enables me to help people by the millions. Because anybody who can read English reasonably well and who wants to improve himself or his life can do so using this book alone. That's all you need. I developed these scales to wrap around the individual. So when you read it, you get it. It's not mysterious. It's not hard to understand. It's not hard to apply. It's not hard to use. It's not hard to benefit from it. I'll tell you a story.
Yeah.
About 20 years ago, I was talking to a friend of mine about politics and government. And I said, wait a minute, let me show you something. So I took out an early version of this book, and I opened it up to the scale of government, and I just handed it to him. I didn't say anything. So he took it, and he looked at it, and he pointed, and he said, right there, I'm there. I didn't even tell him to find this level on the scale. Okay. He found it just instantly by looking at it. That's how effective this is. And the reason it's so effective is it's based on natural law.
Great.
So anything that's based on natural law is going to be workable. And assuming you understand the words, you're going to get it. So what I did is, there is not only a glossary in front of every chapter, there's even a glossary in front of the introduction to the book. So I made it easy for people to get this book and understand what I'm saying. So, for example, there's a scale of communication. Yeah. Well, if you look up the word communication, you'll see it has about 35 different definitions. So a person could reasonably say, well, what definition of communication does he mean here when he says the scale of communication? Well, I tell you with specificity in one line what definition I'm using. So it's not hard to understand and it's not hard to use.
Great.
So my mission now is just to get people to find out about this.
Wow. I know you've talked. I know that in your sum up, you brought a few bits of benefit of septemics and the significance. But why should anybody get the book? What will they benefit from it? And what's the significance of septemics?
Okay. Well, the data in this book are vital for every human being and can help you to achieve your goals faster and easier by explaining what might otherwise seem to be inexplicable or random. If someone were to invite you to a rendezvous, you would certainly expect them to tell you the exact location and perhaps also how to get there. Needless to say, it's very difficult to get somewhere if you don't know where you are, don't know where you're going, and don't know how to get to your destination. Now, this sounds idiotic, but most people do this regularly, so much so that it's considered normal. Most people do not know where they are, where they're going, or how to get there. And this book tells you in any one of 35 contexts. Would you like me to read you the names of the scales so that you know what subject matter we're talking about?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So you'll see when I read this that I've pretty much covered everything that's going to be of interest to someone who wants to improve himself or others.
All right.
The scale. These are the individual scales. the scale of basic purposes, the scale of personal influence, the scale of choice, the scale of permeation, the scale of thought, the scale of identity, the scale of evaluation, the scale of motivation, the scale of control, the scale of stopping, the scale of scholarship, the scale of literacy, the scale of human ability, the scale of memory, the scale of spiritual identity, the scale of mental deletion, the scale of aberration, the scale of physical fitness, the scale of justification, the scale of belief, the scale of equanimity, the scale of attack, the scale of conflict, the scale of reaction. And these are the group scales: the scale of relationships, the scale of life spheres, the scale of government, the scale of civilization, the scale of survival, the scale of management, the scale of exchange, the scale of communication, the scale of allegiance, the scale of sexuality, and the scale of politics. Each one of these scales is unique. You cannot find out anything about scale A by studying scale B. You cannot find out anything about scale C by studying scale D. And that is why it covers the spectrum of human experience. Because you have 35 different scales. So, for example, let's take a hypothetical. Let's say a guy has a relationship problem.
Yeah.
Who doesn't have that? Right?
Everybody, yeah.
So, just off the top of my head, there's a scale of relationships. There are 7 basic levels of relationship.
Okay.
There's a scale of allegiance. When relationships deteriorate, it's because allegiance has deteriorated. There's a scale of permeation. Permeation is what causes love. And there is the scale of, but let's start with those 3, okay? So the guy can just take this book and look at any one of those 3, and probably all of them will make some sense to him in the context of his relationship problem.
Yeah.
He will be able to look at it and say, oh, I see, there's 7 levels of relationship, and I'm here at level 5. Well, no wonder I'm having trouble. You see, then you can say to him, okay, let's move you to level 4, and you have improved his condition. Now, when he stabilizes at level 4, he can then move to level 3. So you can move yourself up each one of these scales. And the beauty of it is, you don't need to spend any more, once you have the book, you don't need to spend any more money. You don't need to take classes. You don't need to hire anybody. You don't need to rely on another person. You can do this yourself.
Wow.
And I wrote the book to work that way, that the scales would wrap around the reader. Let me explain something. Many people ask me, what is this book like? And I have to tell them in all honesty, I'm a very well-read person. I went to school for 28 years. I don't think there's ever been a book like this in human history. However, each one of the 35 scales is expressed in what you might call a table or a spreadsheet. And each one of those tables is similar to the periodic table of elements that is used in physical science. Now, before Mendeleev invented the periodic table, there was chemistry, but he revolutionized it by taking all of the elements, all the known elements at that time, putting them on one piece of paper, on one page, in correct relationship to one another, horizontally and vertically. And that made it very easy to learn chemistry, to teach chemistry, to understand chemistry, okay?
Yeah.
That is what each of these 35 scales is like for the corresponding subject. In other words, I just read you the 35 subjects, right? So each one of these tables is like a periodic table for that subject. So, for example, the scale of thought. There are 7 levels of human thought. So this is very useful because I have solved one of the oldest problems that human beings have had, probably since the beginning of civilization, probably since prehistory, which is the gradient problem. Many people have a problem and they can see the problem, but they don't know what to do about it. And the trick is the gradient. In other words, nobody can lose 100 pounds, but you can lose 1 pound 100 times.
Yeah.
All good teachers, counselors, facilitators, therapists understand gradients. Okay? So you can't just take a guy who's 50 pounds overweight and have him go out and run 5 miles. he's going to do very badly.
Yeah.
He won't do it. So you have to have a gradient. You get it. Okay, let's have you walk 1 mile a day, okay?
Yeah.
And after a while, when this stops being sore and tired, okay, let's try 1.5 miles.
Yeah.
And if you keep doing this over time, eventually you will lose all the weight.
Yeah.
That is what I did in each of these scales, because these scales are based on natural law. In other words, the mathematics that I saw in it when I discovered it makes it provably correct. In other words, if you're at level 3 and you go up, you're going to go to level 2. Now, for guys at, let's say, level 4, and he tries to go to level 2, he will fail because it's too steep a gradient.
Okay.
He can go to level 3.
Mm-hmm.
So you see, you can use this throughout your life. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about romances, finance, your business, your friendships, whatever's going on in your life, your personal life. You can use these scales to find out where you are and move yourself up. Also, you can use it on other people. So let's say this guy who I said had relationship problems, he can not only find what level he's at on the scale of relationships, he can find where his partner is at on that scale. And that might resolve the problem right there. You see, because if he's at level 5 and she's at level 3, that's a big problem in a relationship.
Yeah.
Or like the scale of sexuality. There's a scale of sexuality. I can assure you, if you are not compatible on the scale of sexuality, your romantic relationship will not work.
Yeah.
You could be the 2 nicest people in the world. You might be able to be friends. But if you're going to have a sexual relationship, you have to be compatible. That does not mean you have to be at the same level, but you have to be at compatible levels. And of course, I explain this. I go into great detail throughout the book explaining each scale, what each level is about, how to spot it, and how to improve your situation.
Great.
So this is like a universally applicable system.
So it's like a manual for successful living. And I believe that if everybody have it, or if we all have it, then our lives are going to improve dramatically. And it looks like then the world is going to be a better place, isn't it? Because if we all learn the skills at which we are in our relationships or in our daily lives, and we improve of it, then we improve on it, then the world is gradually going to be a better place. In that case, everybody needs the book then.
Well, let me say this. This book is for people who can read English and want to improve themselves or their lives. Now, about 1.5 billion people can speak English.
Yeah.
I estimate that about 1 billion of them can read English well enough to read this book.
Yeah, okay.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Okay? You have to realize, in the nonfiction world of publishing, if you sell 10,000 copies, that's considered a success.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing I have to tell you is, if you study these skills, you will see there are people who are not interested in improving themselves. Criminals, psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists, okay, mentally disturbed people, mentally retarded people. There are people who are not trying to improve themselves, are not able to improve themselves. You know, it is an established fact in the mental health community that sociopaths and psychopaths do not improve in therapy. It doesn't matter how good the therapist is, because they're not there to get better. If they were, they would not be sociopaths or psychopaths.
Yeah.
So this book is of no use to Charles Manson. Okay?
Yeah.
He's obviously a psychopath. Or Adolf Hitler, also a psychopath. They don't want to improve themselves, but somebody like you, absolutely.
Yeah. Wow.
I can see, just from observing you, that you are somebody who would like to improve yourself and probably would want to help to improve the people around you. So the good news is, I already know from 27 years of observation, anyone who masters this book will have an impact on society, because he's not going to keep it to himself.
Yeah.
He's going to use it.
Yeah.
For example, there's a scale of scholarship, which tells you the 7 levels of scholarship and how to make a person a better scholar. So most parents have kids who at some time or other are having difficulty with school, right?
Yeah.
So even if it's an A student, you might have a particular subject there's trouble with.
Yeah.
So the parent can take the scale of scholarship, and let's say the kid is 12 or 13 years old. He can say, come here, I want you to read this. Look at this glossary. Okay, you read the glossary, now read the scale. And the kid will say, I see, I'm here at level 5, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Then you would say, great, let's move you to level 4.
Yeah.
And then you will be a better student. Now that father, who was a reader of this book, just improved his son. Okay? That is how this works. People have situations that arise, and they use it.
Yeah.
A guy gets in a relationship with a girl, and they're having difficulties. He says, wait a minute, let me look at the scale of relationships.
Yeah.
He looks it up. He says, I can see that she's down here at level 5. No wonder I'm having trouble. So then he could take her and say, here, look, read this glossary, look at this scale. Where are you as regards our relationship? She say, well, I'm down here at level 5. Okay, good, let's move you to level 4. You see? So he's helping another person. So this makes anybody who masters this book someone who's going to impact society, because he's going to help 10, 20, 30, 40 people over the years. Because it's not hard, it's not tricky, it's because it's natural law. So, like the Pythagorean theorem, which everybody in math knows, it works all the time. The Pythagorean theorem was true before Earth existed and will still be true after Earth no longer exists. It's embedded into the fabric of the physical universe. It is a mathematically, axiomatically correct formulation. That is how these scales are. I absolutely know that these scales are correct. Now, for example, let me tell you what I mean by no. Engineers, I went to an engineering school. There were 2,000 students, all right? We had our own building. Everybody in the building was either an engineering student or an engineer, okay? So I know what engineers are like. I hung around with these guys, right?
Yeah.
We're only interested in facts and results. We're not interested in opinions or beliefs. Everybody has opinions and beliefs.
Yeah.
It's not relevant.
Yeah.
So when I was creating this book, my opinion had nothing to do with it. I discovered this empirically, and I spent a lot of time writing it down in a way that would make sense to the average people. So, in answer to your question, this book is not for everybody. It's for people who want to improve themselves or their lives and can read English. And I estimate that is about 400 million people.
Jim, let me ask you, so where can people, because I'm sold, I would really like to have a copy of that book. Where can people buy if they want to buy, and how much is it going for?
Okay, so there's a hardbound, a softbound, and an ebook. Okay, it's very easy to find. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can get it from the publisher, Author House. The hardbound version is about $30. You know, booksellers are not all the same. The softbound is about $20, and the ebook is about $10. But I invite all of your listeners to go to my website, septemics.com, SEPTEMICS. And there you can see not only who's selling the book, but you can see what readers have said about it, many readers. You can say what journalists have written about it, many journalists. And you can read the reviews and even sections of the book. So I invite you to go to my website, because for a very small amount of money, you can dramatically improve your life. I know that because I've been watching this for 27 years. It helps people. People, they get it. They get it right away. It's not hard to understand. It's not hard to use. Now, if you don't know the language, that's going to be a problem in any book.
Yeah.
So I've worked as a counselor and a tutor for many decades. I've been involved in education one way or another since the age of 3. Okay? So I've had a lot of experience in helping people to learn and learning myself. And I would never teach anybody anything without having a dictionary. Now, the good news is everybody has a dictionary now because it's on your phone.
Exactly.
But other than that, that's all you need. Okay? You have if I use a word and you don't understand it and it's not in the glossary, just look it up. If you do that, you will do great with this. Because I can tell you, I hear this from people all the time. They say, wow, this blew me away. That's what they tell me. I don't normally speak like that. I wouldn't use a term like that. But that's what readers tell me commonly when they read this book. Anybody, if you put the word Septemics into a search engine, you'll get hundreds of responses. And you'll be able to see who's selling it and for how much and all of that. It's not hard to find. And it's not hard to see what people are saying about it because it's been around. It's been out about 1.5 years now. Also, my contact information is on the website. So if you want to send me an email and say, on page 27, paragraph 2, what did you mean? I'll tell you. Great. So I'm happy to help readers with this subject.
Great.
And there is a way, if you go to the website, it does tell you, if you want to get an autographed copy, you can get it through the website, to answer your question.
Brilliant.
I'll talk to you about that after the show anyway.
Brilliant. In wrapping up, Jim, what will your final message be to our listeners?
Well, I would say that if you study these scales carefully and use them to resolve your confusions and dilemmas, your life will improve. The more carefully you study the skills and the more diligently and frequently you apply them, the more benefit you will receive. Whenever a situation arises in your life, turn to the appropriate chapter or chapters and analyze the situation against the relevant scale. It's not hard. You find your level on the scale. Let's say the scale of motivation. You want to know what your motivation? There's only 7 basic motivations. So you can say, well, gee, what's my motivation toward my mother? You can look it up. You'll see it. I see. It's there. Okay. Then you can ask yourself, what is my mother's motivation toward me? Wow. And you can find that. And you see, that's powerful.
Yeah.
When you know somebody's motivation, that tells you a lot. That tells you, do you want to be around this person or not?
Yeah.
Or basic purposes.
Yeah.
Like I know the basic purpose of every president of the United States, going back as far as Franklin Delano Roosevelt, because I've studied them and listened to them and observed them. Okay, and I know the basic purpose of many presidents prior to FDR because I've studied them, like Lincoln, Washington, and Jefferson. Okay, it's not hard. If you know the scale of basic purposes and you study the person, you can see it. Now, I'm not saying you should tell people what their levels are or what your levels are.
Yeah.
You can keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
Personally, my policy is never tell anybody his level on any scale, including your own. Yeah. Figure it out for yourself. You use the information, okay? Get the guy to figure it out himself.
Yeah.
That's what works. That's what my career as human development engineer is about. Getting the guy to figure it out himself. I would never tell the person anything relevant to the question. I would only tell him what time the session was, where it was, things like that. Once we started the session, I would just ask the right question. Yeah. How does that seem to you? What do you think about this? How does that work for you? You see?
Yeah.
So it's the same way with this book. You can help the person, but don't tell them. Let him figure it out. And he might need a little bit of help from you, but that's what friends are for.
Great. That's what friends are for. That was well ended. We would like to say a massive thank you for coming on Podcast with SHEILA today.
Thank you.
Great. If you've been listening in, this is season 2, episode 2 of our podcast series, where we've been bringing you seasoned guests with inspiring real life stories to share with us. Do not miss out on all these lovely experiences. Subscribe and be notified when a new episode is released. Whilst at it, please drop us a rating. We have a video presentation of this episode on our YouTube channel. Just search for Podcast with SHEILA on YouTube and you'd find us. Our prayer for you this week is that you find happiness and peace as you journey through life. Until we meet again, have a brilliant